Hi, third graders. We are starting math lesson 9 of module 3 today. And if we look at our lesson objective for today, we are modeling the associative property as a strategy to multiply. And our I can statement says I can use the associative property to multiply. If I can talk, the associative property to multiply. Can you all say that? Associative property. Good. So with the associative property, we're going to especially be practicing that on the back of our problem set today, where we practice just moving parentheses and it makes it easier for us to solve a problem. Okay, so we're going to dive right into our problem set today. So we're on lesson 9. Okay, so if we take a look at that, lesson 9, make sure you have your name and date, and show me you're ready to rock and roll. Okay, so if we take a look, number 1 says use the array to complete the equation. So if I look at the first one, it says 3 times 12. And if I look at this, I have 1, 2, 3 rows. So there's 3 rows times 12 in each one. Okay, and a couple different ways that we could do this. We could count by threes all the way up until we have figured that out. I do know, let me show you one other little trick. So if I'm counting by threes this way, if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and if I cut it right there, I'm going to use the distributive property, okay? So let's actually say that this is like 3 times 10 right there, and you can do this with me too. What is 3 times 10? If I go this way, I've got 10, 20, 30, right? So this part right in here would be 30 if I put a big 30 there, okay? And then in this part over here, I've got 1, 2, 3 rows times how many in each row? Times 2 in each row, which equals 6. Okay, so this side, the left side is 30, and the right side is 6. So what do I do to those two parts? I add them together, right? So 30 plus 6 is 36. We just use a distributive property. So that totally was not even a lesson for today, but that is just a good example of how the distributive property can come in handy, especially if we're dealing with a problem that maybe we haven't counted by 12. That's a bigger number to count by. To count by threes that many times is a lot, so we can use the distributive property to break it up. So it totally was not our lesson for today, but that was just a good way to show that. But what I do want to show you is if I take this same picture and then I'm kind of breaking it up. So this is still 3 rows and there's still 12 in each one, okay? But what they did is they broke it up. So if I kind of look at each one as a separate group, this one right here, there's 1, 2, 3 rows times 3 in each one, okay? For all of those groups, right? They're all showing 3 rows of 3, all of those. So if I look right here, 3 times 3 is kind of representing all of these little groups right here. There's 3 groups of 3, and there's 4 of them, right? So I took this picture right up here, and I broke it. I made 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 3 times 3, okay? So let's solve. What is 3 times 3? 3, 6, 9. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then I've got 9 times 4. And I can solve that by counting by 4s. Let's count by 4s 9 times. Ready? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. So it equals 36. So the same way, or the same answer as above, right? We just came to it as in a different way, right? So we just kind of broke it up in a different way. All right, let's take a look at C. So for C, we're solving for 3 times 14. Again, for this whole thing, I have 3 rows, and there's 14 in each one. I kind of want to solve this one the same as we did the above one to find the total number. Do you want to do that with me? It's kind of fun. So after we find like the 10th column, we'll put a line, we'll cut it, the distributive property. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's their 10th column that I'm going to cut it. So that gives me 3 times 10 right there. What is 3 times 10? We just did it there. It's 30, right? So this is 30. So I'll put a big 30 in there. And then over here, I still have 1, 2, 3 rows times 1, 2, 3, 4 in each row. Okay, so I can count by 3s or I can count by 4s. 3, 6, 9, 12, or 4, 8, 12. Either way, that equals 12. So this equals 30 and this equals 12. Should you be filling this out with me? Absolutely. And then we're going to add those parts together. So then we want to add 30 plus 12. You can do it mental math or write it. 0 plus 2 is 2. 3 plus 1 is 4. So that makes 3 times 14, 42. So I love that. That was just a perfect example of both of those problems of solving the distributive property. Okay. Now, if I want to break this up into a different way, if I look at this right here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups. Okay, they split it up into 7 groups. There's that times 7. And if I look at each group, how many rows are in each group? 1, 2, 3 rows times 2 in each row. So they all have 3 rows of 2, right? So I'm going to put, what would I put right in those blanks right there? 3 times 2, right? So 3 times 2, because we broke those up into rows of 3 times 2. And then we're going to do that times 7, okay? What is 3 times 2? 3, 6, right? Or 2, 4, 6. So it would be 6, because 3 times 2 is 6, times 7, okay? And do you want to count by 6s or do you want to count by 7s to solve? I'm going to do 7s, and if you want to try 6s, you can do that too. Ready? Count with me. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42. We stop right there. So what do we get? 42, which if you notice, look above, it's the same above. We just use a different way to kind of break it up. Okay? Good. All right, let's go ahead and flip it to the back. Alrighty, on the back, the directions say to place parentheses in the equations to simplify, then solve. The first one has been done for you. So let's take a look at this first one, okay? So we're solving for 3 times 16. So they kind of broke it up for 3 times 16 using the associative property. So the associative property says that I can use parentheses and move them around to help make an answer simpler to solve. So I have 3 times. Well, there's my 3 right there, 3 times. So that's the same. I'm going to take that 16 right there, and that's where I'm going to break up. So I've got that 2 times 8, because 2 times 8 equals 16, right? So that's where they came up with that 2 times 8. So 3 times 2 times 8. But the associative property says I can move my parentheses to make it easier to solve, because maybe 3 times 16 is hard for us to solve. We'd have to use the distributive property again and draw our picture and break it up like we did here and here. But when I take that 16 and I say 3 times 2 times 8, I can now move my parentheses to make it easier to solve. So instead of having my parentheses be around the 2 times 8, I'm going to put my parentheses around the 3 times 2. What is 3 times 2? 3, 6. 6. That gives us 6 times 8. Is that a lot easier for us to solve than 3 times 16? Absolutely. So that's why the associative property is handy, as long as we're multiplying all the way through. Now, if we had addition and multiplication, this property would not work. But because we're multiplying all the way through, the associative property says I can move my parentheses. It doesn't matter where I put them as long as it's multiplication all the way through, and my answer will still be the same, but it can be handy to move the parentheses in a place that makes it easier for us to solve. So we can solve 6 times 8 a lot better than we can solve 3 times 16, because we can count by 6 8 times, right? okay? And then when you do that, you get 48. Let's practice that some more. All right, so if we look at B, so 2 times 14 is what we're solving for, okay? But then if we look, so they have 2 times, and then they've got that 2 times 7. Well, they put 2 times 7 to get to that 14, right? Because 2 times 7 equals 14. Okay, so that's where that 2 times 7 came from. 2 times 7 is 14. But instead of saying 2 times 14, because that could be harder to count by for us, I want to practice moving my parentheses and practicing the associative property. So instead of the parentheses being around the 2 and the 7, I'm going to put them around the 2 and the 2, which they already did for us, right? So now I have parentheses around 2 times 2 times 7. So I'm going to do what's in the parentheses first. What is 2 times 2? 2, 4. So 2 times 2 is 4. So that gives us 4 times 7. Is that easier than counting by 14s? Probably, right? Do you want to count by 4s or do you want to count by 7s? I'm going to practice 7s. It's like the Sergeant 7. Will you count with me? Okay. 7, 14, 21, 28. Stop. So that equals 28. So I'm going to put 28 in this tag. Okay. So again, the associative property works if we're multiplying all the way through. And the point of the associative property is that I can move my parentheses into a place where it could possibly make it easier on me to solve. All right, easier for me to solve. Let's take a look at C. So C is 3 times 12. I'm going to put a box around it. So 3 times 12. So I've got that 3 times. But then they have 3 times 4 because they took that 12 and they said what times what equals 12. And 3 times 4 equals 12. Okay, so 3 times 4 equals 12. So if I look down here, right now, my parentheses are around 3 times 4. If I look down below, I still have that 3 times 4. But instead of having my parentheses around 3 times 4, now I want to put my parentheses, I want to move them. So the only other place to move them would be to put them around the 3 times 3, right? So let's do that. So let's put our parentheses around 3 times 3. Okay, and then we have the 4 left over. What is 3 times 3? Let's count. 3, 6, 9. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then we still have that times 4 left over. So 9 times 4. Okay, count by 4s. Ready? So we're going to count by 4s how many times? 9. Here we go. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. So 9 times 4 equals 36. So we're going to put that answer in the tag. Okay, so again, up top we had 3 times 3 times 4. Instead of having to solve 3 times 12, because that's a little bit more difficult, right? I can move my parentheses instead of being around the 3 times 4. When I rewrite that down below, I'm going to now put them around 3 times 3. And that gives me 9 times 4, which makes that a little bit friendlier to solve, right? And when I multiply those, I get 36, which means that 3 times 12 is 36. It just makes it a little bit easier on me to solve. Okay? All right, let's take a look at the next one. We have 3 times 14 as what we're solving. And they didn't put any parentheses in here at all for us yet. So we have 3 times 2 times 7. I want this top one to represent 3 times 14. So where would I put my parentheses so that it would show 3 times 14? What would give me that 14? The 2 and the 7, 2 times 7, right? So that's where we're initially going to put our parentheses at first, because 2 times 7 equals 14, right? So there's our 3 times 14. We wanted to put parentheses here to show that 3 times 14, okay, which we now have 3 times 14, okay? Now, that's hard. We don't really practice counting by 14s, and we don't count that many 3s, right? So we can move our parentheses. If I rewrite that, I can move my parentheses in a way to make it easier for us to solve. So instead of putting them around 2 times 7, I'm going to put them around, what do you think? 3 times 2. Good. And what is 3 times 2? Since they're in parentheses, we're going to solve that first. So 3 times 2 equals 6. Good. So that would be 6 times, and then I'm going to bring that 7 down right there. So 6 times 7. And we can count by 6s, or we can count by 7s. I think since I already counted by 7s this time, maybe I'm going to count by 6s. So let's count by 6, 7 times. Ready? Here we go. Get your counting fingers ready. Here we go. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42. So 6 times 7 is 42. Nice work. Okay. If you're feeling good, go ahead and try E on your own. And then if you feel really good, try F, or you can check it and then move on to F. If you're still not quite sure yet, stick with me for E, and then I definitely want you to try F on your own, okay? All right. So if you're going to pause, go ahead. And let's go ahead and take a look at E. All right, so we're solving for 15 times 3. So we want to put parentheses up top here to show 15 times 3. Okay, so where would I put my parentheses so that I would be showing 15 times 3? Around what two numbers? If I put my parentheses around the 5 times 3, what is 5 times 3? 5, 10, 15. There's my 15, right? So that would give me 15 times 3. Does that make sense? Okay, so putting my parentheses around the 5 times 3 is going to help me to get a representation of 15 times 3, which I want to show that. Okay, now I have 5 times 3 times 3. Down here I have 5 times 3 times 3 again. 15 times 3 is a lot. Again, I maybe would use the distributive property, or I'd break it up a little bit more to solve, or I can use that associative property, right? And I can move my parentheses to help me solve. So instead of putting my parentheses around 5 times 3, this time I'm going to put them around 3 times 3. Okay? And so we're going to bring down the 5. And then we're going to put our answer for 3 times 3. So what did you get for 3 times 3? 3, 6, 9. Okay? 5 times 9. Is that way easier for us to solve than 15 times 3? Absolutely. So let's count by 5s 9 times. Ready? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So my answer is 45. Good. If you did that one on your own, how'd you do? Good. All right, so if you were still with me for E, I definitely want you to give F a go, okay? So go ahead and pause your video and then give it a try, okay? Really stretch your brain. All right, and if you are back with me, so 15 times 2, so where did you put your parentheses to get 15 times 2? If we put our parentheses around the 5 times 3, that gives us 15, right? So there is our 15 times 2, right? And then if I want to make it easier for us to solve, I'm going to use that associative property, which says I can move my parentheses to help to make it easier to solve since we're multiplying straight through. So instead of putting my parentheses around 5 times 3, I'm going to put my parentheses around, where'd you put them? 3 times 2. You got it. All right. So then I have 5 times right there. And what is 3 times 2? What did you get? 3, 6, right? So 3 times 2 is 6, which gives us 5 times 6. That is definitely easier for us to solve than counting by 15s, right? So for 5 times 6, what'd you get? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, right? 30. Okay. How do we do? Give me 2 thumbs up if you got it, okay? 1 thumb up if I'm not quite there yet, okay? Or, oh, I don't get it at all, okay? And that's okay because we'll have more practice, right? But I'm hoping that we were catching on a little bit, and if not, we'll keep practicing away, okay? We're going to actually cross off number 3 today, okay? Nice job today, kiddos. So that was us practicing the associative property. And again, I kept talking about it all the way through, but that associative property tells us that we can move parentheses to help make it easier for us to solve a problem with multiplication all the way through. Okay, nice work. Keep it up, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.